All right, good evening, everybody. It is the Safety and the Sportswriter show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe as we get ready to kick off our Memorial Day weekend and a weekend of summer. Although we'll be concentrating on what we're hoping for the fall. We got a lot of things going on to get to already. With going on with football, we're going to hit a little bit on D Hop suddenly on the market and who we think maybe should be grabbing onto him. We got a little controversy going on with the gambling in the NFL. Plus, we're going to take a look at the AFC North, what we think is going to be what we're going to seek out of those four teams, which should be a very competitive division. And also, the Patriots are already in regular season form as they got suspended for two days of their OTAs for some kind of a violation of rules. So we have a lot to get to. Nate, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy. I'm excited about Memorial Weekend getting started. I'm gonna take a couple days off. I've been, burning the candle at both ends for a while now, so I'm gonna take a little time for myself and my family and relax for a week. It should be a good time.
Yeah, I know what you feel like. I got a couple of barbecues to go to, but nothing big. I'm around here. The highways are just so congested. You don't even want to get on them to go try and go anywhere. It's just crazy. So I'll be sticking close to Norwalk, Connecticut, but got a few things to do and looking forward to just resting and relaxing for the weekend. So yeah, but the people who aren't resting and relaxing, and one guy who now is a hot name, DeAndre Hopkins, getting released by the Cardinals. Not really a shock. If you're a Cardinal fan, it's another WTF sentiment because the team. What are they? What are they going to be? This is a team that 2 years ago were the hottest thing for 3 months and then fell off the map, and now they have doubts of their quarterback, who they made into a multi millionaire. Whether he'll ever turn out to be anything special, they have a new coach, and D Hop is now out there, and he should get a lot of suitors, including I would think the Giants should kick the tires on him. I saw one thing before we came on the air. Someone was saying the Atlanta Falcons, and I was like, why would he ever want to go to Atlanta? Um, they don't even have a quarterback
No.
to per se they can throw to him. So, what's your first of all your feeling on D Hop, and does he have stuff left in the tank? Is that why they're getting rid of him? Is he too expensive? Are the Cardinals in a rebuild, or what's going on here?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing for him was the salary. The salary. There, this is a little bit of a rebuild going on in Arizona right now. There's no doubt about it. They stripped the coaching staff down, started over. They got rid of the general manager. My main question is, what the hell are they doing out there? Because was a year and a half ago, they give their coach an extension. They give the general manager an extension, and then they sign their quarterback up to this, blockbuster deal. Well, quarterback's hurt, may never be the same because his legs were, let's be honest, his best part. And now the coach is gone, the GM's gone, and we're starting fresh. So I have no idea what they're doing out there. Nothing's making any sense. I kind of understand wanting to unload DeAndre Hopkins because let's be honest, he's been hurt. The past few years, he's been suspended for performance-enhancing drugs and missed the first 4 to 6 games last year. But when he played, he was pretty productive. My thing is, does that production equal the money that they were going to pay him? No, but their biggest problem was advertising that they were trying to trade him. I mean, everybody knew they were trying to get rid of him. Everybody knew that they didn't want to be on the hook for that salary. So nobody even offered him a trade because they're just going to end up releasing him. And that's what happened. I think there'll be people interested now. The two biggest ones I've heard are the Patriots and the Chiefs. Both of them have the ability to make some cap room for him. And they're both probably teams that have the ability to compete and make the playoffs. And I think that's what he wants. I did love, however, his parting shot. He said he wanted to go to a team that had a quarterback who really loved football. That was my biggest thing that I loved about him, leaving. He's like, hey, on my way out, bam, bam, let me take a couple shots at the organization. He says he wants to go somewhere where the management knows what they're doing and the quarterback likes football, or loves football, excuse me. And I thought that was hilarious.
Well, the mess that the Cardinals are in is kind of not shocking because outside of that one brief time when they went out and got Kurt Warner and made a run to the Super Bowl, they've been one of those scratch your head tour type situations anyways. They never seem to have a real plan. I mean, they bring Bruce Arians out there. They don't give him the weapons he needs, and they never seem to do the right things. I mean, you just look at it that when they got Kyler Murray, they just wasted a first round draft choice on Josh Rosen.
Yeah.
So it is a team that just seems to shoot from the hip and get nothing done. The one thing I have to say about, when you look at Hopkins getting released, and you look last year how long OBJ sat out there all year long, no one even bringing him in when he was supposedly healthy at the end of the year. I know everybody talks about wide receiver position and how that's such a big position, but with the influx of talent coming out of college football, do you think it makes these guys, especially the veteran guys, making more money, more disposable, where you don't have to give them that money anymore? You can go and get a younger guy and know you can get a younger guy behind him because it's become such a glamour position. It's taken over what the running back used to be in football.
Well, in a way, yes, because I think guys are coming into the NFL with less of a learning curve. I mean, if you think about it, the 80s, the 90s, even the early 2000s, even good receivers would come in and they'd struggle a little bit to get the whole route tree. They'd struggle a little bit to get separation from the corners in the NFL because they were so much better, technique wise. They were so much better skill wise, and it took guys a little bit more time to get acclimated to the game. Well, with the 7-on-7, with the increased passing in the college football game, the nonstop working on your craft, having wide receiver coaches, throwing with your quarterback all the time, that gap has diminished, if not completely vanished. You talk about Garrett Wilson last year, Chris Olave, both coming in and killing it right away from Ohio State. The guys from Alabama that have come in the league the last few years like Jalen Waddle. Those types of guys have come in and stepped up right away. Jamar Chase, the kid from Minnesota, who also was from LSU, coming in and playing well right away. I think it's made these guys a little bit more expendable. But I have to be honest, the outlier is the OBJ contract. I could not believe, and I'm still 100% blown away that the Ravens handed him $18 million. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could have waited and now signed DeAndre Hopkins for about the same amount of money. DeAndre Hopkins was set to make $21 million. Right. And, now I don't think he's going to get that. But then I look at the contract OBJ signed and bam, he got $18 million. He hasn't played in a year and a half. Now you look at DeAndre's season last year. He played in 9 games because he was suspended for 6. He had 96 targets. He only caught 64 balls for 717 yards, but he had 3 touchdowns in 9 games. That's not great. But if you average it out to a 17-game season, he still would have probably had 110 catches. So there's still production to be had. But to me, if I was going right now, I just don't think I'd drop $20 million on this guy. I think that's way too much money for this dude, and I think he's a headache a little bit. And I would go somebody younger.
Yeah, I think, a team I'm surprised isn't being mentioned is the Jets yet, but I'm sure they'll get around to it this weekend to bring him in to give Aaron Rodgers some more targets. But like you said, for the money, and as you said, I mean, there are a lot of good young wide receivers around that could maybe be a little less productive or as productive. And it's worth that to put the money elsewhere, to put it in the offensive line. Every team we see is talking about offensive line. So maybe I'd invest there more than since I can get wide receivers at a cheaper rate and see what goes on there. Before we get into another talking about the gambling here, the Patriots. I don't know. Did you hear what they got in trouble for?
They didn't really release it. There's all these rules now about, no contact during any of these voluntary OTAs. So, it could have been, I believe the NFL reviews a lot of the practice films. So they could have been watching film, seeing 2 guys, banging into each other, guys grabbing each other. That's now against the rules that you can only have meetings for 4 hours. So a player or a coach or an assistant or anybody could have reported that the meetings went longer than 4 hours. It could have been any of those things. But, once again, it's the Patriots stretching the rules, if not breaking them, which is nothing new and not surprising to me.
So just in the conspiracy theorists go crazy on it, and it's another thing that just pushes the envelope about nothing.
But I do want to say that I mentioned the Chiefs and the Patriots as homes for Hopkins, and the more I look at it, those are the two teams that need him the most. I mean, the wide receivers on the Chiefs just don't. I mean, I know you have Travis Kelce, I know you have Patrick Mahomes, but the rest of these guys, I know they played all right last year. But to count on these guys once again, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, I mean, those are their three starters. Those three guys, in my opinion, aren't really Super Bowl starting wide receivers. And then you talk about the Patriots, their wide receiver room is actually worse than the Chiefs. They at least got Juju from the Chiefs, but then their other two starters are Devontae Parker, who I've never been a fan of, and Tyquan Thornton, who's a young guy who still needs to prove himself. So I think those are the two best teams for DeAndre to go to if he wants to play for a contender. And I think those are the two teams that need his services more than anybody.
Yeah, I think the best place if he's talking about Super Bowl is Kansas City.
Yeah,
and I think the Patriots you could probably get a little bit more money out of.
I agree.
I think those are the two things, and that'll tell the story of what really drives Hopkins.
Does he want to win or does he want cash?
Because he should have enough cash to get by for a few years. That he shouldn't need
a few lifetimes.
Yeah, a few lifetimes. So as you talked about, where the tip of the iceberg is starting to show, for years and years and years, the NFL and all these big leagues, and whether it be Major League Baseball, the basketball, or anything, kept gambling out of the sport. They refused to partner up with it. They tried to keep this away, keep gambling off the table, and now we're starting to see players suspended for it. And but they're in bed with these gambling sites. I mean, it's kind of it's their right now. Actually, you're infringing on like their rights as an American citizen. It's not illegal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're not allowed to bet. I've got to look at the rules to be specific, but there's some rule about not being allowed to bet on their games that they're playing in. I don't think they're allowed to bet on the NFL at all, I think is the rule, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I do know they're not allowed to bet while they're in the facility. And that to me is the weirdest rule of all. Like, what the hell does it matter if they're in the facility? But that's what some of these guys got in trouble for, was actually placing bets in the facility. And that to me is really weird. But, this extends beyond this year. If you think about last year, the kid out of Atlanta, who was trying to get back from his mental health issues. And I'm talking about, obviously, the wide receiver for them, who's now playing in Jacksonville, Calvin Ridley. He was suspended for the entire year. And now we're talking about Jameson Williams, who's a guy who, came out of Ohio State and Alabama, respectively, and then, tore his knee in the championship game, missed the start of the season last year. And then now he's suspended for the first 6 games again. That's a big problem for this guy who's trying to get his career going. You got to be on the field to, be important to your team. And he hasn't been on the field much to begin with, and now he's suspended. So I think this could be, bad news for him, especially after he came out yesterday and said that the reason that, he got in trouble was he didn't know about the rules. Well, A, that's bullshit. And B, the team's not going to like hearing that.
No, of course not. And you've got to know he knows the rules. I mean, first of all, everybody knows that before, they go to the combine and everything, or maybe at the combine, NFL sits down with all these rookies and tells them, drug policies, gambling policies. They tell them everything about it. And I'm sure every team, once they draft you, reiterates all this stuff before they, you go through the signing stuff. But, there is a hypocrisy to the fact that now ESPN And hey, just go into any stadium in America, and DraftKings signs are all over the place. I mean, it has now become, what the era of sports talk is now all about either fantasy or gambling. That's what they talk about, and you're not going to get, gambling out of football because it's one of the big reasons it drives its popularity. It's the easiest sport to kind of figure out and bet on, next to maybe basketball's close, but football is the biggest one to figure out with the lines, and you can figure out who's going to run well or pass well against different teams. There's plenty of scouting out there, so you're not going to get out of there. But there has to also be some kind of a barometer or some kind of a bar that these players can, I guess, gamble. How are you going to keep them from gambling on themselves? I mean, or their team? I mean, I don't know. How do you do it? Because you could get a friend to place the bet for you. You know what I mean? They let the genie out of the bottle a couple of years ago. Yeah, and I don't know how you put it back in.
Yeah, that's what that was what you mentioned earlier. I want to hit on. They tried to distance themselves from these gambling websites and these gambling companies, for years, and tried to kind of separate the league from the gambling, and now it's intertwined. So I think it's very it's going to be interesting to see how much more they police this, because you've kind of gotten in bed with these DraftKings, these gambling agencies, these fantasy football organizations, and now you're going to punish your own players for doing it. It's going to be hard for them to police, but based on the information I've received, is they've got the cooperation of these companies basically opening up their computer systems so that the NFL can spot check this shit. And it's crazy to me, but Jameson Williams is obviously the highest profile guy that's gotten in trouble so far. And this guy, to me, seems like a headache. I mean, he's already drawn criticism in Detroit when he tweeted about he wanted Lamar to come there when they already have a quarterback in Jared Goff, who obviously had a great season last year. He's just not the most well-spoken guy, as far as, knowing what to say and what not to say. And I think they need to sit this kid down and be like, listen, you're already set up to miss 17 of the first 23 games of your career. So, we're already about to cut you. You keep running your mouth like this. You keep saying stupid stuff that makes the organization look bad. He's not going to be around very long. I don't care how fast the guy is. They can replace him with somebody else because, like we said, the wide receiver position is pretty abundant.
Yeah, but the whole thing is this is what you're going to find in every draft on every team. There's somebody that I remember, OBJ when he was with the Giants. I mean, he was, he finally became too much and they had to get rid of him. I'll even go back as far as Tiki Barber when he was with the Giants. I mean, Tiki, for all his greatness, was a pain in the butt. If you were a Giant fan, the way he stabbed his quarterbacks in the back and his coaches in the back and everything else, Tiki was hard to really like. He really was, because his mouth got him in more trouble than anything else.
And his wife too. I don't think his wife likes him either. After he cheated on her when she was pregnant with twins with his intern.
Yeah.
Tiki just isn't a real likable guy to anybody, in my opinion.
Right. And so, like, a guy like Williams is getting himself in trouble legitimately, and then he spouts his mouth off, ain't going to work. It's just not going to work long term.
No, this league's not. The NFL stands for not for long for a reason, and you start giving the team more reasons than they already have to cut you. It's not a good look. And, there's several. I don't understand what it is and what exactly happened with the Detroit Lions, but they're the team that's had the most guys suspended. They had a group of 4, and there's a 5th guy from the Lions that's now being investigated. And I'm just like, man, you'd think they would have hit this home after the first 4 guys, and now they've got a 5th guy. I've got to imagine that Coach Dan Campbell's going to be reiterating the rules to these fellas while they're walking around the facility.
The other thing about and maybe it'll never happen again, or maybe it will happen, but the thing about the Lions is they are a very young team. They are getting a lot of good press, and if you're young you tend to get full of yourself very fast, and they haven't even had to win anything yet, and they're already full of themselves. Imagine if they start winning. How
Yeah,
crazy is that? So they better pull them in now, because it's going to be even worse. That'll be like they'll go crazy up there, and we will see. It's going to be a test. I like Dan Campbell, but he's going to have to get in their heads and say, look, guys, do you want to be football players? We have an opportunity this year to do something and move us back to being a playoff team. Green Bay's on the rebuild. Chicago's on the rebuild. Minnesota's a good team, but maybe they overachieved a little bit with that 14 wins last year. So we have an opportunity to charge through a door. And right now, it looks like we're going to be 5 players short when we try and do it. So,
yeah, you'd think that this would be a team that is ripe for success, and with Aaron Rodgers leaving the division, you'd think that they would do everything they could to keep their best players on the field and keep this thing moving forward. But it is Detroit, and we've seen this before, where it looked like they were on the precipice of making a run in the playoffs, and then boom, they fire Caldwell and start going backwards. And it's just some of these organizations can't get out of their own way. We talk about the Cardinals, we talk about the Lions. It just seems to be the same old story every time you think they might see some success.
Back to the beginning of the gambling. Football is the number one sport in America, hands down, far and away. But are they getting a little bit arrogant and leaving behind what made it a great fan experience? I mean, first of all, we all grew up rooting for our favorite teams. Then fantasy football kind of weaseled its way in, and for the generation that's following you and a generation that's following me, they grew up with fantasy football being their big thing. I mean, I sat down every day or every Sunday for the Giant game. More important than anything else was the Giant game. The kids that are growing up now are fantasy football people, and they worry more about their fantasy football team than anything else. And now you're bringing gambling into it, which is another aspect that was always on the outskirts of the sport, but now you're making it mainstream. It doesn't can, and then with all the football or the contracts, we're gonna have Thursday football, we're gonna have Friday football with Black Friday, which is never done before. Can the NFL get too greedy, too arrogant, and saturate the market, and maybe not alienate everybody, but start alienating some people out of what they want? Can you give us too much?
They're doing it right now. I mean, they're getting very greedy. I mean, you think about all these different services that you have to even watch the NFL. I mean, it used to be before, you'd go to the CBS, you'd go to Fox, maybe NBC, maybe ESPN, and, but you'd still be able to hit your, NFL games by watching your regular networks. Well, now, we've got Amazon Prime hosting Thursday Night Football. Some of the preseason games are on the NFL Network, which some people don't have. Now we're going to have these games on Peacock, where they're going to have the first playoff game on Peacock, and you've got to buy Peacock just for that one game. It's like, at some point there's going to be a break off. There's going to be fans that are just like, I'm done. Moving the DirecTV's had the NFL ticket for years. People bought the satellite dish. They bought the DirecTV packages. They bought the NFL tickets so they could watch their favorite team or the games they want to watch. Now you have to go to YouTube TV, and you've got to get rid of the dish that you bought before with DirecTV. So it's just like, wait, when is it going to stop? It's just like they're wanting to, getting so greedy that they're, selling this one game for $100 million. It's like, are you going to have to start buying each game to watch it? Because that's kind of seems like where it's going. Like, I want to watch this game. You got to pay money to watch this particular game. And it's like, at what point are the NFL fans going to be like, you know what? F this. I'm not paying the $5 for Peacock. I'm not paying the $380 for YouTube TV after I already got DirecTV. It's just, there's got to be a point where the greed is going to run some of these people off, I would assume.
Well, and I've been through it personally, because I used to have great connections to get Giant tickets, and all my friends who have Giant tickets won't have them anymore because the seat licensing, which they said I'm earning nothing on this. They used to say The price. This is going to enhance the price of the ticket or whatever. Yeah, the ticket price keeps going up, but the licensing doesn't go up. You know what I mean? Or if you have to pay more for it or whatever. But I mean, I remember the first time I went to the Giant Stadium and bought tickets off my friend's father. The ticket was $25. Now it's $80 to park.
Yeah,
and it's
well,
like
Well, not only that not only is the going to the game experience ridiculous to even pay for, but then you've got this flexing, and sometimes people are planning on going to a game and they buy flights and they buy hotels and they get rental cars, and then a couple weeks before the game the NFL changes the day of the game. People can't always get off of work. Sometimes you don't have days off. Sometimes you don't have additional paid time off, and you've already set up your schedule to do it on the weekend, and then all of a sudden the game's flexed to Thursday night. How the hell are you going to go?
Yeah, I mean, just look at picture if you're going to like Vegas for a Sunday afternoon game at 4:00, or say it's a Sunday night game, and they suddenly flex into 4:00, and you were planning on flying in until just before the game because you're going to stay the rest of the week. And all of a sudden now you got to change your flights, and you know how much fun that is.
Yeah, good luck with that.
So, I mean, for a sport that was built on the fans and the fans' loyalties, they seem to be taking the loyalty of the fans for granted now. And I'll tell you, the day I was listening to Sports Talk Radio and John Merrick was on the radio, and he goes, when they first started talking about street licensing in the new Giant Stadium, he goes, if my father was alive, he'd never let me do that. You know why, John? Because your father knew the whole league was more important than one team. And he the Giants way back when could have sat there and not gone in on the TV package, gotten their own package at that time. And none of the Packers wouldn't have survived. Half the teams that have been around wouldn't survive. And the Giants would have run the league.
Well, the only thing we were just talking about, the Cardinals and the Lions not be able to get out of their own way. Well, the only organization that can bring down the NFL is the NFL. They're already platooning out some of these games to Europe, to Mexico. The Jaguars are playing 2 games this year overseas. What if you're a Jaguars season ticket holder and you're paying for all these preseason games, which don't count? None of the players even play. And then 2 of your home games, or one of your home games, is in London or in Germany. Not to mention some of these other teams that are having to travel across the country and losing a game. Not to mention, some of the games, some of the teams have 9 home games. Some of the teams have 8. You're paying all this money, and what are you getting in return? It's just ridiculous at this point. I mean, I can't afford to go to these NFL games.
No.
The only time I go is when somebody gives me a free ticket, because it's better to watch it on TV anyway. And that's all that the NFL cares about anymore. They care about the viewers. They care about selling this product to the TV viewership. They don't care about the people going to the games. It's a shame, really.
And when you think about the Jaguars, it's a great example you brought up. Here's a franchise that has been mired in mediocrity and also been kind of a sad sister since the inception. Okay, they got a little success with Coughlin and Mark Brunell originally. They had a couple of moments maybe in the sun, but here's a play. This is a market which I guess the NFL wants to build. And you have one of the bright young stars of the NFL as your quarterback now, and you're sending out of the country for 2 games instead of giving him to the fan base that's going to buy his shirts, come to see his games. And if Jacksonville happens, and we've talked about it, they have an opportunity to vault and be the top team in the AFC South behind Trevor Lawrence. Why would you want to send him outside when you could build your fan base at home with that and maybe get a couple of more season ticket holders?
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing, is that you're finally starting to have a decent product. And instead of, getting a fan base to finally follow this team and get on board with it, you ship, several of the games out of town. I just don't think that's the best way to endear yourself to the public and to your fan base, is by making them travel to Germany to go to a damn game. I don't understand it. I mean, this team is finally coming together where they have the quarterback. Looks like they may have found their coach, and now you've got to go to London to watch them play. to me, it doesn't make much sense. I understand that the NFL wants to continue to grow, but at some point it's got to be about what can we do to the fans? What can we do to make this a good experience for the fans? Not about how much money can we get when that seems to be all they really care about.
And another thing is, if you're down in the South, if you're down in Florida, you're down in Tennessee, college football is number one down there. College football will always be number one until you give them some reason to make Sunday the biggest experience of the weekend. And the more you just sit there and treat your fan base down there like we don't care about you, they're going to stick to their college games.
Oh,
and they'll be fine.
People,
and they'll be fine with it.
Oh, people in this town don't care about NFL football at all. The people in Knoxville, they'll go to the bar and have some drinks and watch a little bit of NFL because they're betting on it or because they want to see what their fantasy players do. But nobody really cares about you'd think that this would be a Titans town because we're only 2 hours and 30 minutes from Nissan Stadium where the Titans play. But I can tell you, nobody really cares about the Titans here. It just doesn't matter.
I guarantee you go into that bar on Sunday, more of the conversation around the bar will be about the Vols game on Saturday.
Oh, people have their orange on, dude. I mean, that the people are wearing their Tennessee jerseys and not Titans jerseys. With me doing, the sports memorabilia thing, I can tell you, sometimes I get Titan stuff thinking, people will be all into this here. And I can tell you, stick to the Vol stuff because people just don't care about NFL football around here. It's, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, all the states that are Florida, even that are in the Southeastern Conference area, Louisiana. Some of those people like their Saints, but other than Saints fans, really, all those states are geared towards college football, and that's what they care about.
All right, we're going to stick to football here a little bit and we're going to break it down. We're going to go over the next few weeks, start talking about the divisions, and I want to start out with a division that I think is going to be one of the most competitive divisions or has a chance to be one. It's got 3 really good teams. One that's a little bit of a mystery because it's owned by an idiot, and we don't know what's going to happen. That's the AFC North. I've been watching the internet a lot this weekend, or this week, I should say, with the OTA starting. A lot coming out about Pittsburgh. Most of it very, very positive. Ben Roethlisberger has been chirping a little bit, and I'm like, Ben, just retire. No one liked you when you were around. They tolerated you because you were talented, but no one cares about your opinion. But Kenny Pickett is getting a lot of attention right now in a division that will have Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Deshaun Watson. So let's start with Pittsburgh. I know I love that coach. You like Tomlin too. Pittsburgh has been one of the cornerstone franchises of the NFL, at least since the 70s, for the last 50 years. They're now potentially going to have their 3rd franchise quarterback after Bradshaw and Ben Roethlisberger. Let's talk about Pittsburgh right now. Have you been paying attention? Have you ever been hearing any chirping about them?
Yeah, I sure have. I've heard a lot of talk about Pittsburgh the last few weeks. Some people are all on board with the Pittsburgh, Steelers, and some people, have them more towards the end. The biggest thing about this division, and we're talking about right now, the AFC North, is, which team is going to be last. I've asked that question to a number of people, and I keep getting different answers. And, I haven't heard a whole ton of them picking Pittsburgh, but there's been a few picking Pittsburgh. The whole thing with the Steelers is going to be their offensive line. Is their offensive line finally good enough to where they can run the football and they can protect Kenny Pickett long enough to where he can throw the football? I like what they've done with the wide receiver group, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. They've added Allen Robinson. They've still got Gunnar Olszewski. They've got Miles Boykin. They've got a couple guys that can catch the football. And then, I like the running back room with Jalen Warren and Anthony McFarland and Najee Harris. And I really, I might be in the minority here, but I really like what they've done in the quarterback room. Yeah. I mean, they've got Kenny Pickett, and then they've got 2 pretty good backup quarterbacks in Mitchell Trubisky and Mason Rudolph. Now, do I want Mason Rudolph or Mitch Trubisky to start for my team the entire year? No. But could I handle, a 2-2 split over 4 games with either one of those guys? Hell yeah. And Both those guys have been in the league. Both those guys have started games. Both those guys are going to help Kenny Pickett get himself ready to play. So I really like what they've done at the quarterback position. And, we know that the Pittsburgh defense is always going to be good. They got TJ Watt. Cameron Hayward has been a staple in this league for 10 to 15 years. Alex Highsmith was the guy last year that really came on. They drafted Joey Porter. They lost both their corners. So, they picked up Patrick Peterson, who's kind of long in the tooth, but played pretty well last year. And they got Joey Porter Jr. at the other corner. So I think they're going to be okay there. It's just, to me, the only question mark I've got, or the biggest question mark, is the offensive line and how much progress they've made there.
All right. Now we'll move over to Baltimore, which did what it needed to do. They fixed the Lamar situation. They went out. OBJ, we'll see what OBJ brings to the table. What about Dobbins? Is he ever going to be able to be healthy for a year? What about the rest of that team?
Well, that's the big thing is their running backs. I mean, they all have been banged up. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, all three of them are extremely talented and really, really good running backs. But you have to get on the field. You have to be able to play. And all three of them have struggled to stay healthy. Dobbins, I think you're going to see if it's a big if, and you don't really want to say if in the NFL, but I'm just saying it because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. But as we saw with Saquon, as we've seen with a bunch of other guys, usually it's year 2 coming back from that injury.
Definitely.
Where they start to step up. And I think we started to see flashes with J.K. Dobbins last year. And if he can just stay healthy, he should be able to with the, like I said, they've got 3 good running backs. They're going to be able to, not have to give him the whole load. He played in 8 games last year. They kind of held him out until game 8. He came in. He started all 8 of those games. He ran 92 carries for 520 yards. That's almost 6 yards a carry, Joe. I mean, that's pretty impressive if you're asking me. My big thing is keep him healthy till the season and then let this guy run, because I'm telling you, I watched this guy play for 3 years at Ohio State. He is the number 2 all-time running back from the Ohio State University, and there's been a lot of good ones. You got Archie Griffin, you got J.K. Dobbins. Those are the 2 number 1 and number 2 all-time rushers there. If you can crack Eddie George and all the guys you can think of, Robert Smith, I mean, just go down the list. If you can crack all those guys and get to the number 2 spot for the Buckeyes, this guy ran for 2,000 yards in one season in college. He's got the talent, man. He just needs to stay healthy, and he needs the passing game to take some of the pressure off the running backs in Baltimore.
What about the defensive side of the ball?
You know what? I'm loving this defense right now. I got to be honest with you. Roquan Smith, I think, was a huge pickup. They gave him the big contract. They put him next to Patrick Queen. I think both those guys complement each other very well. So I love the 2 linebackers. And I like the backup linebackers. They got Malik Harrison. They got Trenton Simpson, who they drafted out of Clemson. Both those guys can get on the field and help. The other linebackers, Tyus Bowser, who's a pretty good linebacker as well, is also Adafe Owe, who's more of a pass rusher. You got him. You got David Ajabo, who you drafted last year out of Michigan, who was basically a redshirt guy because he was, tore his Achilles in the pro day. So if he can come back and give them anything, they're gonna be pretty solid. I mean, Broderick Washington and Michael Pierce are 2 pretty good run stoppers. And I like what they've done in the secondary. Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame, I like what he did. Marlon Humphrey, and then they picked up Rock Yassin from the Colts. So I think this is going to be a get back to the old school Ravens defense who can actually get stops, unlike the last few years where they've had to score every time.
Yeah, that's been their biggest problem. They gave up on the defensive coordinator, and they didn't have a lot of talent on that side of the ball. So let's look at Cincinnati. As Joe Burrow goes, Cincinnati will go. Still an explosive offensive team. Offensive line proved a little bit last year, but still, it's the worry you have to have. What do you think about Cincinnati?
Yeah, I mean, I love the wide receivers. Obviously, are second to none with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. How they've been able to keep those three guys for 3 years is unbelievable. The offensive line is going to be better. They picked up Orlando Brown Jr. From Kansas City. They're going to move Jonah Williams to right tackle. They've still got Ted Karras and Alex Kappa, who are two proven guys. The left guard position is one that you have to watch a little bit with Volson. I'm not sure how good he is. And then Lyle Collins. What do they do at right tackle? Do they just insert Jonah Williams there and expect him to transmit his left tackle skills to right tackle? It's not that easy. So I think Lyle Collins actually has a head up on him if he's healthy. So the offensive line is obviously going to be a key component, but can this defense keep it going? They lost their two starting safeties and Von Bell and the other kid who was back there and big time playmaker from last year. That's going to be the big thing to me is can Nick Scott and Dax Hill, Jordan Battle, the three of those guys kind of replace what they had in the secondary the last few years, and can Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard keep going after the quarterback like they have been. We'll see if they can keep it up. The good news is they drafted Miles Murphy, who I think was a steal where they got him. I believe he was in the second round out of Clemson. This is a kid who dominated at Clemson since his freshman year. I think he was the 28th pick overall, so he got him late in round one. I think that was a big pickup for the Bengals, and I think he's going to get on the field early.
You know who I think this is a big year for when you put it with the Bengals and it has nothing to do with the players in the field? Their defensive coordinator. He's got a lot of good press over the last 2 years. If he can keep that defense up to snuff it's been for 2 years after losing the players he's lost, he is definitely going to be on the fast track to a head coaching job.
Yeah, no. He was, being sought after by a lot of teams this offseason. In fact, I think he came down to the final three out in Arizona. And then I know he was also being talked about pretty heavily at the position in Houston. So Lou Anarumo is his name, and he's a guy who has been tearing it up. I mean, what he did with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard and getting to the Super Bowl and all that. He's entering his 12th season as an NFL coach and his 5th year with Cincinnati. He's been the defense coordinator since 2019. And the fact that he's returning and coming back, I think is huge for the Bengals.
Yeah, because that will help the adjustment and the loss of those guys because he'll come up with something. He's one of the best defensive coordinators at mid-game adjustments.
I agree with that. And he knows what he's doing, man. He knows how to use the guys that he has. Jesse Bates was the other safety that we were talking about who's left the team. And I think he'll be able to replace, I don't think there's one guy that can replace Bates. But like I said, they're going to use Nick Scott, Dax Hill, Jordan Battle, Michael Thomas even. They're going to use a combination of the four of those guys to try and replace that production.
And now we'll go down to the mistake by the lake that is Cleveland. It continues to keep making mistakes. I mean, we've talked about it at length. Deshaun Watson is going to be Deshaun Watson. We don't know which one you're going to get. Is the last 3 years of barely playing going to finally come to be towards the end of him, or will he shake off the rust and be what we saw a few years ago when he almost pulled that upset in Kansas City? In the first half, he looked like the best quarterback in football, not so much in the second half, maybe. Their coach, we've talked about this at length too. He can't throw anybody more under the bus. The buses can only go over him if they don't win here. I mean, he took over a team, got them to their first playoff win in, 20, 30 years. He looked like he was on the fast track, and then it falls apart, and Baker Mayfield had to go. This guy had to. The thing I look at with Cleveland outside the coaching staff is, are we going to see the Ezekiel Elliott type of drop off with Nick Chubb? Because if we see him drop off, he's carried the ball a lot. He's been one of the best running backs for the last 3-4 years. If we see him fall off, they're going to need somebody else to step in, or they're going to have to do something different. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who has carried the ball. I think he's carried the ball over 1,200 carries in the last 5 years. So, I mean, that's a lot of mileage on this kid. I mean, 6,341 yards. He's got 48 touchdowns. This is a dude that, has carried this Cleveland Browns team the last few years. And my biggest problem is now who's backing him up? I
Yeah.
mean, Kareem Hunt's gone.
Yep.
And Kareem Hunt was a big factor, in my opinion, for Nick Chubb having success. I mean, you had this other guy that could take some of the load off. You had this guy that could let Nick Chubb rest. You could split the carries and kind of lessen the load on Nick Chubb. And with Kareem Hunt gone and out of the picture, I think that's a bad thing for this offense. I'm also, looking at this wide receiver group. They've got Donovan Peoples-Jones. They've got Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper. I'm not as in love with this wide receiver group as some people are. They drafted Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee. He's coming off an injury. I'm not sure how much he'll be able to help right away. They've got David Bell, the kid out of Purdue, who was productive in college, hasn't really shown anything in the NFL yet. I still think the Browns may add another veteran wide receiver before it's all said and done, because let's be honest, Anthony Schwartz, their other draft pick from a couple of years ago, he hasn't done anything. So I'm not 100% in love with this wide receiver room, and I'm not in love at all with the running backs behind Nick Chubb. I mean, none of these guys, Dearness Graham, who really flashed the last few years, when he got a chance, he's gone too. So you got Jerome Ford, you got Demetric Felton, who's more of a wide receiver, really, and you've got John Kelly Jr., who hasn't really done much in the NFL. So we'll see. We talked about the offensive line for the Steelers. The offensive line for the Browns has been kind of suspect since that 2020 season. So are they going to get back, Joel Bitonio and Jedrick Wills and all those guys, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin? They haven't been able to stay healthy the last few years, and they certainly haven't been the same team. We'll see what happens. They've got DeJuan Jones, the draft pick out of Ohio State, and Luke Weipler, the other draft pick out of Ohio State, who are right there to take over a spot if these guys can't live up to their end of the bargain.
What about D-Hop going there? I mean, Haslam will pay money.
I think it's a very realistic spot for DeAndre Hopkins. I think I can see Haslam overpaying for him, and I can see the coaches, especially after these OTAs, being like, Jim, hey, listen, you want to win? We're one guy short. Amari Cooper is a great player. He's certainly had a tremendous career, but is he a one still? I don't know, but he's definitely a 1B if you've got DeAndre Hopkins.
Right.
And if you're talking about Amari Cooper and DeAndre Hopkins, as opposed to Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore, that's a big time upgrade. Last year in Cleveland, Cooper still had 78 catches, over 1,000 yards. I think he's the real deal still, but you got to look at him and be like, listen, this guy's been in the league for a long time. He's got a lot of miles on him. He's going to be 30 years old pretty soon. I think this is a real possible landing spot for DeAndre Hopkins, especially, like we said, if money is his main motivator.
And the other thing is, I'll tell you, when we look at this division, what I see in this division is there are four teams which on paper look to be potentially pretty good. The Browns, I think, have the biggest question marks. I think the other three teams, you got to put them in the top 10 in the AFC, all three of them. Maybe even the top 6. You don't know with these guys what they're going to be. But this is the kind of division where it's going to be, I think, so competitive that you're only going to need 10 or maybe 11 wins to get out with a championship, because they're going to beat up on each other. I don't see anybody sitting there going 6-0 in that division. I think they're going to have there's going to be a lot of competition. And I think, and that's what's going to make it hard getting two teams out of there, because, other divisions that are weaker, like the AFC East maybe is a little bit weaker. Maybe the AFC West isn't as evenly matched. I think the problem is you're only going to get one team out of there. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big issue here, is that these teams are going to beat the crap out of each other. Okay, we all know about the Ravens and the Steelers, going after each other. We know about the Browns and the Bengals. We know about the Steelers and the Browns. I mean, these are big time rivalries and
old time rivalries.
And these teams are going to, beat the crap out of each other. And these teams are going to, split some of these series 1-1, home and homes. So I'm like you. I have a hard time believing that we're going to see more than maybe one or two teams at the most get into the playoffs, and I'm really kind of leaning more towards one, maybe two, I guess, if they're able to win all these games outside of the division. But you're looking at a team that's if I've got to pick, who I'm going to roll with here, I'm going to go with the quarterback. So I'm going to go with Joe Burrow, and I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson because I trust those two guys more than I trust Deshaun Watson and more than I trust a second-year Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, I'll be rooting for Pickett on that one. But I like Burrow, too. I like Lamar, too. Deshaun, keep him down in the bottom. I'm going to ask you each team. We're going to rank each team in sections. Coaching staff or head coach and coaching staff, 1 through 4 in this division. Who's the best? Who's the worst?
Wow. You know what? I have to go probably Tomlin 1. I got to go Harbaugh 2. I got to go, it's hard for me to say this, but Taylor 3, and then Stefanski 4.
Well, because Stefanski, as we've said, is a real question mark. So I understand that pick. Yeah. At quarterback, you just kind of said it, but I'm going to ask you to make the ultimate pick, 1 through 4. Name the quarterbacks in order.
Yeah, it's easy. Joe Burrow 1, Lamar Jackson 2. I got to say Deshaun Watson 3, and then Kenny Pickett 4. But those last two are pretty close, just because Deshaun Watson looked like garbage last year when he finally got on the field. But maybe it's rust. I don't know. I lost a lot of respect for this guy when he chose to sit out, collect $18 million, and not play.
I totally agree with you on that one because that's what if a player's got to want to play. We said it's like Kyrie Irving in basketball. It's like all these guys. It's like show me when you really want to play, when you want to push yourself to a limit to win, and then I'll start respecting you. I mean, great players never go to the bench. Even the guys that you sit there and you try and take down. Aaron Rodgers doesn't go run to the bench. No. It's like So I mean, whatever with that. Overall offense is 1 through 4.
Yeah, I'm going to probably go Bengals 1, Ravens 2. Steelers 3, Browns 4, I guess. I mean, maybe Browns 3, Steelers 4. It's 6 one way, half a dozen with those two teams right now because there's question marks on both those teams. Like I said, the Steelers offensive line, they've got to be able to run the football to help their young quarterback. And then the Browns, they've got to be able to run the football too to get Deshaun Watson back on board. So I guess I would go with the Steelers 3 and the Browns 4.
And on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I'm all about the Ravens D right now. I mean, like I mentioned, Roquan is a big-time player. He's one of the best linebackers in all of football. You pair him with Patrick Queen, I think their pass rush is going to be something to deal with. So I'm going Ravens 1. I'm probably going to go Bengals. No, I'll probably go Steelers 2, Bengals 3. Yeah. Steelers 2, Bengals 3, and then and Browns 4. The Browns have a really good roster. It's just they haven't done what you would expect them to do. Myles Garrett. I like the addition of Zadarius Smith. Denzel Ward is a good corner. I like the addition of Juan Thornhill, the safety out of Kansas City. But until I see it, I'm not going to believe it until I see it. And this is a team that was 4th in the AFC North last year. And to be honest, the offense wasn't really the problem. Nick Chubb had a good season. I was pretty impressed with what Jacoby Brissett did. And, they shipped his ass out of town too. And I was like, this is the guy that was there, busting his ass every week. And so that's how the Browns do things. Some guy comes in, actually plays well, puts a team on his back several weeks, wins some games for you, plays through injury, and what do? We shut his ass, ship his ass out of town. So that's typical Browns management there.
Seems only right. And one last part is, like, since most of these games or a lot of these games come down to it, field goal kickers.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not say Justin Tucker? I mean, that guy is just unbelievable. Until he falters, he's one of my best kickers in the league. I think you got to put him at number one. The kid from Cincinnati, I think showed that he can make kicks in the big time. 2 years ago, last year wasn't quite as good, but I think he's still a pretty good kicker. And then it comes down to Cade York from the Browns, who had a pretty good season his rookie year. And then also you got the Steelers kicker who, got to kick in some tough conditions. But Chris Boswell has done it. I'm going to give Boswell the slight edge over Cade York just because he's got more experience.
Yeah. Like you said, with Tucker, you can't go. The only thing I get disgusted with Tucker is, man, when you got to listen to Sunday Night Football with Chris Collinsworth, you think he wants to date him or adopt him. I don't know. It's just like, oh my God, everything is Justin Tucker, even before he does anything. And it just drives you crazy. It's like that gets me rooting against him.
Yeah, well, that's more on Chris Collinsworth than it is on Justin Tucker. I mean, Chris Collinsworth, is the one that is annoying, not him.
No, I know. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up so we can everybody can get down there Memorial Day weekend. You're heading to the beach. Hopefully the weather will be beautiful for you and the fam down there. Make sure you get all the toys. Do not leave any toys behind. You will not be you got the truck for a reason.
That's right. We've got all the toys ready to go, and I'm gonna just spend time with the girls, and that's pretty much it. I'm not even playing golf this time, so that way we can do family time full time.
And just remember, sunblock.
Yeah, look at me, man. You can see me on camera. I'm white as can be. I've been stuck in this cage for the last 6-8 months.
I've been sunburned from the last weekend. I was out on the beach in Fairfield, so I was like, I'm baked. So I never remember to put that on. But everybody have a great Memorial. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just in case anyone missed it, check out the interview with Mark Givler from Buckeye Huddle. He broke down the Elite 11, the quarterback competition with all the recruits for 2024. He also gave us a breakdown of the 2023 recruits in the Big Ten and with the Buckeyes and all the big-time teams. And he did a really, really good job. This is a guy who is if you haven't read his stuff, go to Buckeye Huddle. Read his breakdowns because this guy is very intelligent. He's very articulate, and he knows football. So check it out and check out the interview with him from Man Coverage.
All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Memorial Day. Remember, though, there is remember our veterans on Memorial Day as well. When you're thinking about there at your barbecue, give them a salute, a high five, a shout off a firework for the veterans that keep us safe. And we will be back next week. Everybody, have a great weekend.
All right, buddy.